round of attacks. So we see Dimaga here really needs to get aggressive, maybe get on a third base, perhaps get up a different lair tech as we see a few Mutalisks coming. Really like to see some Hydralisks, especially as MakaPrime has not shown tanks yet. There they are. So we see MakaPrime moving through these destructible rocks. This is a large army compared to what Dimaga has, 2,900 to 1,800. See a few Mutalisks perhaps going over to scout for Dimaga, but MakaPrime with these tanks is really going to be able to put a chokehold on this center path. You see Dimaga moving into a lower position with these Zerglings, possibly for some sort of split attack. Maybe if he sees this these units of MakaPrime move out, he can attack in the other direction, as two paths will be opened shortly for these two players. Zerglings just no match against these tanks right now. So 3 tanks on the field, another 4th tank coming to support. So we see shields and level 1 armor coming for the Terran player, as well as a level 1 weapons upgrade. So these Marines will be a lot beefier in just a few seconds, and MakaPrime may be waiting for that before he pushes out. He does see this hatchery here, so a quick stim by just a few units, and these few units with stim are going to be able to do a ton of damage to this hatchery. Terran infantry is really OP once it has stim against buildings. As we see these tanks in great position, one right inside the watchtower, inside the smoke there, going to be able to ward away any sort of Zerglings. And this hatchery may go down if Dimaga is not able to push away these Marines and Marauders. The tanks are going to be able to one-shot the Banelings as well, so Banelings cannot get close unless they do some sort of multi-pronged attack, trying to draw the tank fire in a different direction. So we see 2 groups right now being set up for Dimaga. Terran player firmly entrenched in this watchtower, a number of tanks set up, and infantry in the back. Now going to try to finish off this hatchery. Down that hatchery goes. Dimaga just on the 2 bases right now. Looks like Dimaga's got a force here, a force down here, and a 3rd force on the left, maybe trying some sort of 3-pronged attacks around here. Very effective against the tanks, as they can only fire one direction at a time. If you can get in there with the Zerglings, the other tanks will fire on them. So we'll see how this attack goes for Dimaga. So we see the right side feigning in, like trying to draw a few Marines, take him down. So we see the south moving in, now the right side, and the left perhaps. Here comes the left, trying to go in on these tanks. First tank goes down from the smoke. Second tank possibly go down. Looks like the tanks stayed up for quite a while, able to do a lot of damage to those Zerglings, and just a few Roaches and Zerglings left for Dimaga. Just not a lot of units for Dimaga now. 200 army compared to the 2,700 of MakaPrime, and he really needs to push and try to move into Dimaga's base here. Looks like instead he's going to take this opportunity to establish this 3rd command center. So we see Dimaga rapidly creating more and more units, trying to get those Banelings up, serve as an equalizer against the Marines and Marauders, but the tanks are just so good against Banelings. MakaPrime now moving down, needs to siege up here and just start pushing forward with the siege. Now up to 6 tanks, taking down a number of creep tumors. Dimaga's going to have to prepare one final assault to try to break out of his own base here, perhaps bring some queens up as well, as these Zerglings are just no match for the siege tanks here. And siege tanks doing 35 damage. Zerglings with the 1 armor going to take 2 shots to take down, but just so many siege tanks compared to the number of Zerglings. We see a drop from MakaPrime onto the high ground here, and the few Marines Marauders are going to go down. And just a nice siege being set up by MakaPrime. Dimaga getting up a few infestors now. So infestors with burrow could perhaps throw some infested Terran by the siege tanks and cause them to friendly fire, take a number of siege tanks down, and then move in against the tanks and Marines with the Zerglings. So we see a few drops coming in for Maka, 2 8-packs of medevacs. So multiple fronts for this pressure. We have drops down on this natural here. So he's going to be able to pick up a number of those units. Just no anti-air for Dimaga, really making it tough for him. As these Zerglings are just trying to keep up with all these drops, they're not able to. Dimaga is Eing. may know that this is a lost cause at this point. Taking down as many of these Zerglings as possible. So you see these drops, the two medevacs are healing up the Marines at the top here, preparing for another drop. Taking down creep tumors can be very powerful against those banelings and Zerglings. You want them moving as fast as possible, and nothing Dimaga can do against these siege tanks. Now we see the upgraded weapons for the siege tanks now going to one-shot those +1 armor Zerglings, doing 38 damage. So we see the Infestor Terran come in, trying to take down those medevacs. Medevacs are going to drop the Terran Marines here, but Baneling's going to come in and perhaps finish up those. Needs to move forward with these siege tanks one at a time, taking down these rocks, and got a number of siege tanks. This one kind of at a weird angle there, with the Marines busting through these last destructible rocks. These Zerglings here split, just making sure no more drops coming on that high ground, and Dimaga is not looking good for him. He's going to try one last push out with all of his queens, his infestors, all of his banelings and Zerglings. He's going to do a lot of damage to those frontline units, but these tanks are doing so much damage to these Zerglings. All the banelings going down. Once they're down, nothing you can do with those infested Terran popping out, and just so many reinforcements coming from MakaPrime through the destructible rocks there. A number of tanks coming in and Marines, and Dimaga has to GG. So Dimaga was able to take that first game, a bit more of a macro game for him, able to get up to Ultralisk, but MakaPrime able to come back in the second and third game here and move on to the second round. So we see our first Zerg player falling in the round 1 of Blizzcon here. We'll see if they're able to make any sort of progress up the tournament ladder here and try to get into the later rounds. But right now, the Roach upgrade for the Zerg in this Terran matchup did not do much in this game. As MakaPrime, just so much pressure, eventually sieging up against Dimaga here, and Dimaga was not able to get onto that third base in time. So this is a pretty good series here. Maka was denying those expansions best he could, did a great job in all 3 games, and Dimaga was just never able to recover from the get-go. So bring you more series from BlizzCon coming up. Thanks for watching.